Hello and welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host and subconscious reprogramming expert and emotional abuse recovery mentor, Allison K. Dagny. At some point in your relationship, if you wondered if you were the problem, if you replayed conversations, you questioned your memory, you were Googling things, searching for phrases like, am I crazy? Am I too sensitive? Am I too much? Looking up things about PMDD or different kinds of emotional disorders or psychological disorders about yourself. Well, people who are actually crazy don't sit around analyzing their behavior, trying to understand what went wrong. Okay? So this episode, I am going to help you see why you weren't the crazy one. And this episode isn't going to be about like diagnosing anybody or anything like that, right? It's about explaining why your mind started turning on itself. So if this sounds like you, or if you experienced anything like this episode is going to help you through that. By the time you're done listening, I really want you to understand why this happens and normalize this for you and help you understand how this happened, how your reality got derailed. And then I want to teach you and coach you through some belief shifts so that by the end of this, you have a way to kind of shift your perspective on this to help you heal. Logic isn't something that is going to make changes, and so I'm going to help you understand why that is and what to do instead, and hopefully give you some real clear pictures on what real healing looks like. So that you're not gaslighting yourself through this. So you might not know this, but intelligent people, self-aware people are really vulnerable to this kind of thing, being told that they're crazy, slipping into these conditioning patterns of believing that you are the problem or that you have a mental health issue or something like that. And I lived this pretty much my entire marriage, that I believed I was the problem, that I believed I was crazy, that I needed mental help, that I needed something different. Meanwhile, he never attended a therapy session ever one time while we were in our marriage. So you were likely a very empathetic person. You were likely self-reflective. You were likely willing to take responsibility and try harder and do more and be better and all the things. That is an amazing set of qualities and traits for any human. Because how can we get better if we aren't willing to look at our flaws and mistakes, right? And I'm not saying I was perfect in that relationship, far from it. I had my own wounds from my own childhood, my own programming, my own defense mechanisms. I had all kinds of things that I brought to that relationship. And the issue is, for most of us, especially if you've been programmed to believe you're not good enough, or programmed to believe that you can't do anything right, or made to believe that you're not smart enough, or that you're not pretty enough, or that anything enough, right? Well, then what happens is you're always trying to prove yourself. You're always trying to do better, be more, achieve extra, make the other person see or believe that you are worthy. And so this is the trap that a lot of very intelligent, self-aware people get into, is that because they can reflect on themselves, they can often lose themselves in others. So if this happened to you, or if it is happening now, just know that your nervous system is just trying to make sense of the inconsistencies, right? Your nervous system is trying to help you, right? It's trying to help you so that you can feel safe. And if you feel confused about the relationship that you're in currently, or maybe the one that you were in before, this is a signal. This is information, right? Confusion, I tell people this all the time. Confusion is not a healthy place to be in a relationship. So if someone is making you very confused. They're not being clear. They're not being direct. They're not giving information appropriately. They're stringing you along. They're being very vague with their words. They are non-committal, or they tell you something and gaslight you, right? That confusion, all of that is not the sign of a healthy relationship or a healthy person. So if you're experiencing confusion, I'd really, really, really encourage you to check in with yourself if you're currently in a relationship like this and you're feeling confused all the time, or if you have been in a relationship like that and you're like, oh, was that actually abuse? Maybe it was, right? Because in healthy relationships, you don't leave feeling confused. The other person is willing to give you clear answers. They're willing to discuss things with you. They're willing to give you details. They're willing to understand your perspective and your feelings, right? So confusion is meant to disrupt you, and it's also meant to have you be either one, in a submissive position where you have no power, or two, to make them feel like that they are in control. Or in some cases, it's both. So when this happens in a relationship, when you go into, let's say, any relationship, and let's say you feel really good and confident, secure, and stable in the beginning, but then somewhere along the way, things got derailed. And that's what I want to talk about. So when people are giving mixed signals, when sometimes they love you and sometimes they seem to hate you, when sometimes they're very clear and sometimes they're very confusing. You're feeling this like back and forth, a roller coaster, whatever you want to call it, right? There's no consistency. So when these kinds of things happen, they usually don't happen in the beginning. They happen over time once you start feeling secure in the relationship. And then eventually you'll be told that you are the problem, or that your reactions are the problem, while actually the behavior stayed the same. Like the behavior meaning like after the initial like love bombing stage, if the person was very kind and compassionate and loving and all the things, right? All the things, you wouldn't be with them if they weren't those things, right? And then later they start to show you a different person. And then when I say the behavior stayed the same, I mean that behavior, not the initial behavior, but the changed behavior, right? And that becomes inconsistent behavior. So when someone is inconsistent, then what you can rely on, the reliability there, is that they are inconsistent. That's the one thing that you know for sure, is that this person is inconsistent. And this was in my experience, and this is a lot of other people's experiences too. But here's the thing that I really want you to understand. It's that when someone's words and actions don't line up, then your brain is looking for answers. It's trying to make sense of things because you don't have the answer. You don't have the information. And what happens then is rumination, spiraling, all of the things that keep you struggling in pain. And I really think it's important to make sure that you look at people's behaviors over their words. And that was something I didn't do in my abusive relationship. But here's the thing that I think is going to be important for you to understand as well, is that you still have an intuition. You still know what's right and wrong, even if you were gaslit, even if you were manipulated, even if you have a warped sense of reality because of the abuse, right? Your intuition doesn't disappear. It just gets quieter because your fight or flight response has kicked in, and that's like alarms. That's loud. Where intuition is like a whisper. So you still have your intuition, you just can't hear it when you're under fire like that. And also, you were probably trained to doubt your intuition. You were probably conditioned to believe that your abuser or whoever was controlling, manipulating you was smarter than you, knew more than you, knew you better than you knew you, right? So then you give away all your power and authority to them. Now here's where I want to help give you some shifts and some reframes. So if you have a core belief that keeps repeating, and you'll know this based on your self-talk, you'll hear this in your in your mind when things trigger you, or you notice something that reminds you of your ex or the past in like a new relationship or something like that. And maybe that's something like, I'm just too sensitive, right? This could be something like, this is what people do. They say this to you when they cannot hold your emotions, when they are not regulated, they do not have stable emotions themselves. They don't want to deal with your emotions. So they'll claim that you're too sensitive to get you to be quiet, to stop expressing your emotions, to stuff your feelings because they are uncomfortable with them. Okay? So if you're believing I'm too sensitive, right? Well, I'm going to ask you, what else could be true here? What else could be possible? Because in those moments when you were quote unquote too sensitive, you were actually responding to their inconsistency, or responding to their abuse, or responding to their criticism, or responding to whatever they handed to you, their gaslighting, their whatever, right? You weren't imagining it, you were actually experiencing it. So of course you're going to have emotions, because emotions are human. Emotions are real. People don't get emotional for no reason, right? You have emotions because you're experiencing something, and that is coming out in your feelings. Okay? So if you're someone who's like, yeah, I am, I've even been told this when I was a little girl, I'm too sensitive or whatever, right? Like, who didn't have the capacity to deal with your feelings? Who didn't know how to regulate your emotions and co-regulate with you when you were a kid? Mom, dad, caregiver, who was it, right? Were your siblings always saying to you, oh, you're so whiny, you're such a baby, blah, 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 right? You're in an adult relationship and somebody says something and you get emotional and you might cry, right? This doesn't mean that you're too sensitive. And so you need to start making shifts yourself. What is the thing that you say to yourself all the time? And maybe it's not that, maybe it's something else. So I'm going to give you a couple other examples. And if you are curious about this, you can go to my website at www.radiateandrise.com. And then at the top, there's like a little pink bar, and you can take a quiz right on my website. And I'll help you uncover your beliefs, and then I'll give you feedback within 48 hours. Like, I'll go through all of your answers and write you feedback. And that will help you kind of understand where your patterns are and like what the themes are for you specifically. The next one would be, let's say they're saying to you that people say to you, you overreact all the time. And then you say to yourself, oh, I just overreact a lot and I'm extra, or, you know, I can't control my emotions, or, okay, this is similar to the other one, right? But maybe in a different way. Maybe you get frustrated really easily. Maybe you get angry really quickly. And then people say you're overreacting. Well, what else they're doing is they're invalidating your emotions. Like, what are you overreacting to? What exactly are you overreacting to? Like, to what? Because who determines and who decides what's an overreaction or an appropriate reaction? Right? If someone, let's say you're in a relationship with someone and you found out they were like messaging someone else, and that is causing you to get really angry, to say you want to go through their phone, to start crying, and then you get into a big argument, and then they just tell you you're overreacting because they're just talking to somebody. It's no big deal, right? And then now you are made out to be the one who's crazy, or the one who's overreacting, or the one who's a problem because of your reaction. But the fact of the matter is, if they were messaging someone else and that goes outside of the boundaries of the relationship, that's not an overreaction, that's appropriate. I think anybody would react that way. Most people, aside from like a Buddha or something, or a monk, to be all zen about it and be like, oh, okay, well, you did that and I'm just going to go within and meditate. Like, give me a break, right? That's not, no. Okay? So maybe the shift here is to ask yourself, when I believe I'm overreacting, or other people say I'm overreacting, is that actually true? Does this reaction warrant this situation without having someone else try to convince you otherwise. Again, because they don't want to face the consequences, or they don't want to deal with it, or they just want to sweep it under the rug and move on and say, oh, you just want to cause problems, you're overreacting, you just want to fight all the time. No, certain things require certain reactions, and it's normal to have a reaction if you've been betrayed, hurt, lied to, coerced, pushed back into a corner, abused, all the things. So it's not necessarily about that I'm overreacting. It's about, like, does my reaction match this situation? If you've been listening to this podcast and something in you keeps nodding along week after week, well, that's not random. It's your intuition nudging you that there's something deeper here for you. I offer a free root cause call to help you uncover what's really behind your subconscious patterns, the self-doubt, the overthinking, the emotional pain that really never lets go. And in this private one-on-one call, I help you get clarity on the real reason that you're stuck and what your next best steps forward could look like, whether that's with me or another path that fits you better. So if my episodes speak to your soul, there's probably a reason. Follow the nudge, and you can schedule your free root cause call with me in the show notes. And now we'll get back to your episode. Well, how would other people react here? And I'm not saying people don't overreact. Yes, sometimes they do, right? If somebody cuts someone off in traffic and that person gets out with a gun and tries to shoot that person, I think that's a bit of an overreaction for someone cutting off in traffic, right? So, yeah, there might be times that seem extreme reactions to situations, like, oh, you didn't empty the dishwasher the right way, and then the other person starts having an absolute meltdown over it, right? That might be a bit of an overreaction instead of, can we just talk about this, right? But if someone cheats on you and you start freaking out and you start, having an emotional episode, I don't think that's necessarily an overreaction. So I guess the part here that I'm trying to convey is, like, does this reaction warrant what happened? Okay. Another one would be, I can't trust my perception. I can't trust myself. I can't trust my thoughts. I can't trust my decisions. Like, I can't trust anything from me. So I want you to, like, think about, like, where did that come from? When did you start believing that? When did you start doubting yourself? If you're a little kid and your parents are very, let's say, helicopter parents, very overbearing, always worried you're going to get hurt, always worried you're going to get sick, never let you do anything because you can't go to friends' houses, you can't do this, you can't do that, because they're just so protective and worried that something bad's going to happen to you. You might learn over time that the world is unsafe, people are bad, I'm going to be hurt, I can't trust myself, right? You'll start believing that. So I want you to ask yourself, like, if you don't feel like you can trust yourself, your perception, your outlook, your reality, where did that begin? I know for me, it began when I was in my emotionally abusive relationship, because I was told that I wasn't smart enough, because anytime something happened that I maybe made a mistake or messed up, that was reinforcement of that for my ex-husband to tell me. So then it was like, oh yeah, look what you did. You screwed this up. So see, you're inept. Oh, see, you made a mistake. Not, you made a mistake, let's learn from it. You made a mistake. This means that you're not smart enough, that you can't handle it, that you need my help, that you can't live without me, that I need to be there for you, right? Like, these were the things that I started to take on in that relationship, to believe that I couldn't trust myself. And this is a very insidious and slow process that happens to people who are being emotionally abused, especially with covert narcissism, hidden abuse. The abuse is not in your face as much as it is very sneaky, right? So find out where that came from. Like, when did you start believing that? And then you need to reframe this. Like, wait a second, maybe my perception wasn't wrong. Maybe the environment and the person I was dealing with, maybe they didn't handle it right. Because that's what I learned. My ex-husband, because of how he handled it, didn't empower me. He disempowered me because he wanted to have all the power, right? So if he said, you know what, you made a mistake, let's figure out, let's brainstorm, let's work at this, let's figure out how to not let this happen again. Is there things that we need to do? Like, how can I help you? Let's work through it, right? That was never the issue. It was I was always the issue. I was always the problem. I need to get my shit together. I need to work harder. I need to go to therapy. I need to be medicated. I have ADHD. I could go on and on and on about this. I write about it in my book, When Tears Leave Scars. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, especially if you feel like you might have experienced emotional abuse or covert hidden abuse, because that's what my life was for 20 years. So your perception wasn't wrong. My perception wasn't wrong either. I could trust myself. I just started learning that I couldn't over time, because every time something would happen, he would use that as evidence to prove what he believed about me. And then I started to believe it about myself. Okay, now I want to talk about logic and why logic did not and cannot save you, never could save you. And here's what I mean by this. Most people think, well, if I could just understand it better, or if I could just get some clarity, or just know, I would feel better. And that makes a lot of sense, but in this kind of relationship dynamic where people are confusing you and causing you to doubt yourself and all these things, right? That kind of logic will just keep you stuck in a loop, because the loop is for you to keep ruminating, to keep thinking about it, to keep trying to come up with the answers, find out what happened, what went wrong, what you did, what you could have done differently, all that stuff, right? Because the thing is, logic is good, right? Logic is a good thing, but it only works when things are consistent, when cause and effect are consistent, when someone does something and then you know what the result's going to be, right? Where the rules aren't changing in the middle of something, in the middle of the game, in the middle of the relationship, right? The rules have to remain the same. The structure of the relationship needs to remain the same. The behavior needs to be a consistent pattern, right? And that's usually not what happens when we're in a relationship like this, when we've been abused like that. It's not like that. It's chaos, it's drama, it's roller coastering, it's emotional highs and lows and trauma bonds. It's like none of it is stable. And so logic itself, right, and this is why it really isn't going to help or save you, is because logic is meant to solve predictable problems, right? Like, if you ever solve like a puzzle or, a logic problem or something like that, right? They have predictable outcomes. And the relationship wasn't that. The relationship wasn't predictable. It was contradictory. It was confusing. So your brain did what it could, the only thing that it could, right? It starts running more calculations. It tries to figure it out. It tries to understand that gap in information and why things happened, and, am I the problem, and what did I do wrong? And then you end up again, not trusting yourself, trusting the other person even more. And often, when this starts to happen, you're replaying old conversations, you're trying to explain your intentions, you're choosing your words more carefully, you're trying to say it the right way, you're, trying to understand things and do better and be better and all the things, right? Like, just because you have been made to believe that you were crazy, or that there's something wrong with you, or you were too much, or you were too sensitive, or overreacting, or not enough, or right, just insert the many, many multitudes of those things. But that's not what this is, right? And that's what I want you to understand, okay? Because feeling crazy is what happens when your brain is trying to solve a problem that really doesn't have a stable answer. It doesn't have a predictable answer. It doesn't have a predictable outcome. So you literally keep yourself in a spiral trying to find out where you went wrong, studying the relationship, studying your patterns, studying their patterns, replaying all the fights that happen and trying to figure things out, right? And that makes a lot of sense, because now all of a sudden you are, repeating these things over and over again. And then what happens is it reinforces this idea that you're crazy because you can't come up with an answer. Okay, but you were not crazy. You were abused. You were manipulated. You were gaslit. You were hurt. You were conditioned. Okay, so that doesn't mean you were crazy. Even if you believe it right now, even if you're like, yeah, but I did this thing and that was crazy, and I did that thing and that was crazy, it doesn't mean that you were crazy. There may have been things that you did that seem like they were crazy, but that doesn't mean that you as a person are crazy. We all do things. Like, I've done stupid things. That doesn't mean I'm a stupid person, right? If you do stupid things all day long, consistently, your whole life, then maybe I could say I'm a stupid person. But that's not the case here, right? Especially when you're under that kind of stress and pressure from somebody who's deliberately trying to harm you and then make you feel like that you're the problem. And this is important because once your brain decides that you are the problem, then that belief starts to run automatically. This is where I help people shift their thinking. Because if you believe I'm crazy, I'm the problem, I'm too much, I'm too sensitive, right? That becomes your automatic programming. And what your brain believes, it wants to find proof of. So every time you do something, you're going to go back to that old system of beliefs. See? Oh, I did that. That means I'm crazy. See, I knew I was crazy, right? Oh, this happened. Yep, I cried again. Oh, yep, I am too emotional, right? So your brain wants to believe whatever you tell it. And if you have this automatic program that says, yeah, I am the problem, I am crazy, I am this, I am that, right? Then it's going to just be looking for more evidence of that. And then you're really deeply embedded into that loop. But most people who want to get out of that loop, one, they don't know that this is happening, which is why I'm glad you're listening so that you know. But two, they think that they can think their way out of it, and that's just not the way it works. You have to do a lot of other things first. First, you have to get out of the toxic relationship, right? You have to get out. If you haven't gotten out yet, you've got to start planning and start making your escape. But then once you're out, then you've got to start doing a few things. You've got to start regulating your nervous system. You've got to get support. You've got to find ways to co-regulate with other people, coaches, friends, family, safe people. And then once you start to do that, then you can get into the mind part, the subconscious part. And maybe some of you are already there, and that's why you're doing this practice every time you listen to this podcast. You're not going to think your way out of it. You have to do other things first. And then when you do that, then you can start figuring out what you believe, what your patterns are, what your system of beliefs are, and then you can start to shift those. So logic is not the thing, right? Logic is great in a lot of areas of our life, but when it comes to healing, logic is only going to take you so far. Logic is like willpower. Logic is only running 5% of the mind. 95% is happening on a subconscious level. So even if you know you should be doing something differently, you're not going to do it if your program tells you not to, right? You know you should leave that relationship, but your programming is, I'm going to be all alone forever. No one's going to want me. It's going to be too hard. Bad things are going to happen. I can't do it, right? That's what's going to drive the show. So even in order to change, like some people need to start to get a little bit of courage and maybe drum up some willpower to do that, or maybe start to shift their beliefs a little bit about how they can make that happen for themselves. But again, logic is, there's not a lot of power in that when it comes to healing in the subconscious mind. Now, if you're listening thinking like, wow, a lot of this does sound like me, there's a reason. And like I said before, you can check my free beliefs quiz on my website, and then you can see which ones are running in the background of your mind. And then once you know what those are, then you can start to make changes, right? You have to start questioning those beliefs. If the belief is I'll be alone forever, and you keep saying that over and over and over in your mind and to other people, and in every which way you can look up, down, sideways, and back and forth, then what do you think your reality is going to be? You don't believe it's possible for you to be with anybody else. You don't believe it's possible you'll have help, support, love, whatever, companionship, friendship, you believe you're going to be alone forever, right? Why would your reality be any different if you keep saying that you're going to be alone forever? See what I mean? So it's important to understand like why your brain reacts this way, why it is programmed this way, and how you can make changes to it, because you're not stuck with this. It's not something that's permanent. It's changeable. It's called neuroplasticity. Your brain can change at any age when new learning happens. And so, if you want to do that, you can always schedule a free root cause call with me, and I can talk to you about what your patterns are and then tell you about the options to help you do that. So another thing I want to mention here is because I said this at the beginning, what healing actually looks like. I don't want you gaslighting yourself, okay? This is not about that whatsoever. What we're not doing, we're not convincing you that it wasn't that bad. We're not forcing forgiveness so I can heal. We're not trying to be just like totally unbothered, ignore it, shove it under the rug. None of that. Real, true healing is a few key things that I want you to know. It is finding trust in yourself, in your own intuition, in your inner knowing, believing that you can make a good decision, believing that you can make a choice that is in your best interest and the interest of those who you love and care about. That's part of this, is trusting you. It's also knowing your innate self-worth. That is so important. I have another episode about the first thing that you should be doing to heal after emotional abuse. It's episode number 163. So if you haven't listened to that, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to that. But healing is not convincing yourself that it wasn't that bad. It is not forcing forgiveness just to try to heal and move on and get over it because people say you need to. It's not trying to just be unbothered and sweeping things under the rug. That is not real healing. Real healing means you are learning how to love yourself first and foremost, that you know your worth, that you know you are a valuable human being. That's important. And if you don't know that already, again, go back and listen to that episode. Healing is learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your intuition, your internal signals, right? Getting that back because it was something that was put inside of you when your soul came into being. You have your own innate radar to learn to trust yourself and your instincts. And then also teaching your nervous system in the body, because your whole nervous system lives in your body, how to be safe, how to regulate, whether that's with others or with yourself. And then interrupting your belief loops, the patterns, instead of arguing with them. Like, I have a client who would often say, it's so hard, but this is so hard, and that's so hard, everything's so hard. And I would ask her, like, well, what else could it be, right? We need to interrupt those old patterns, because that's just a repetitive belief that it's so hard. And what do you think if you believe it's so hard, you believe it's really difficult and life is horrible, what are you going to see more of, right? If you've heard me talk about the reticular activating system, you know this. It focuses on what you tell it's important. So if you're saying it's hard and you're saying it's difficult and you're saying life is just shit all the time, what do you think you're going to see more of? That's what you're going to see more of. So what's a better way you could say it? Well, it's getting easier. I know with practice, it's going to ease up. I know things are getting better. That's the shift. You have to catch those loops. You have to catch the thoughts and what you're saying. And if you're not doing that, it's running automatically. And then you're just like a zombie and you're just allowing these old programs to dictate your life. Now, let's say that you know what your self-talk is. You know what these beliefs are, right? And you know things like you're saying like, I'm so stupid, or I should have left sooner, or I'm never going to heal, or this is going to be too difficult for me, or nothing ever works, right? Let's say that those are your belief systems and you logically know that you need to be thinking of things a different way. And then you're like, well, yeah, but I could shift that and, be real positive and think really positively. Yeah, that's going to be part of it, right? But here's where people often get stuck in this part in particular, because it feels like you're gaslighting yourself. It feels like you're trying to make yourself believe something that's not true. But here's what you're actually doing. You're actually trying to find evidence that it's possible. Not that it's true or that it's absolute, that it's possible. Is it possible it could get easier? Is it possible you shouldn't have left sooner? Is it possible you can do hard things? Is that possible? Have you ever done it before? Did you ever have a difficult situation in your life that you got through? Right? Did you ever do something that was really challenging and you overcame? Right? So that's where a lot of times people get stuck, and that's why I have that free root cause call, because we can kind of figure that stuff out together. Where this came from, why it keeps looping, what actually interrupts it, what your pattern is, what the theme of your pattern is. Because some people might come in and have a pattern of codependency and people pleasing, and other people might just have a pattern of fear and absolutely freezing up or running away at the first hint of any adversity. So it's going to be unique to you. Your specific beliefs are unique to you. Your programs are unique to you, but that's also why you feel the way you feel and behave the way that you behave. Now, awareness is important. I always say that it is. It explains the stuff. It explains the why, right? But it's not going to change anything, just to know. The root of the issue, getting to the root, is what stops the loop and gets you out of coping constantly. Nobody wants to live their life just in coping mode. Right? That's just like having a Band-Aid on a wound for the rest of your life. Wouldn't you just like that wound to heal finally? Right? That's what root cause work does. That's what subconscious healing does for you. And I need to differentiate too between the work that I do, which is something called rapid reprogramming, versus just general subconscious healing, because there are other people out there that are saying they're doing subconscious healing work, but it is not the same thing as rapid reprogramming. Rapid reprogramming is a proven 4-step process that helps you rewire your neural pathways using specific subconscious language and repetition and consistency to rewire your brain. So if there are other people out there, I'm not saying those things don't work, but it's not all the same, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Rapid reprogramming is different from some of these other, if you just type in like Google, like subconscious healing, right? Like I had a client before who had done subconscious healing before coming to me. And she said to me, she said, I'm afraid this isn't going to work because I've already done something like this. And I had to explain the difference to her, because the work that she had done, they told her to, figure out what her beliefs are and things like that, which is great. And one of her beliefs was shame related, and it was I am bad. And they had her flip that to say I am innocent. And I remember when she told me this, I almost fell out of my chair and I just face palmed, because I'm like, this is not how you do this. This is not how the subconscious mind works. You can't change words. You can't just try to introduce a new concept about innocence when somebody believes that they're bad. Like that is not how this works. And so I'm like, well, no wonder the subconscious healing didn't work for you, because they weren't using the right tools. And I'm not saying it doesn't work for people, and I'm not saying other people don't get results. Please don't get me wrong, because that's very possible. But what I know is that the people who do this, the people who do rapid reprogramming, absolutely get results. You can read them on my website. You can Google my coaching program and see reviews there. Like, I wouldn't be doing this if it didn't work, right? So I just want you to know that there is a difference in that, because if you're like, subconscious healing, I hear about it, it's great, blah, 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 and then you go find, some other method. Again, I'm not saying it's not going to work for you, but it's not this work is what I'm saying. This work is different. Okay, so I want you to just remember a few things that you were not crazy, right? Even if you were the one that thought you were crazy. Crazy people don't self-reflect. Crazy people don't go to therapy and try to get help and do all these things, right? You were made to believe something about you so that the other person could maintain power over you. So that you could be the one that they told what to do, and now you rely on them, and they have authority over your life. They're in power, you're in weakness, right? You were not crazy. You were abused, and you were responding to a person and a dynamic that didn't make sense and that was intending to create confusion and chaos in your mind. That made you feel crazy, but that doesn't mean you were crazy, okay? And there is a difference, okay? Because you don't have to live your life feeling crazy or believing that you are. And if you do feel like that, please reach out to me. I want to help you, and I want you to see that that is not who you are. The fact that you've questioned it, the fact that you wonder about it, right? That is normal. That's very normal. Anybody would. Okay? So you have clarity, you have intuition, you have intelligence, all the things, right? It just got buried under the confusion. It got buried under the chaos. It got buried under all the beliefs to make you believe that you were something that you weren't. You weren't crazy. Thank you again for listening. And again, my DMs are always open. You can email me at allison@radiateandrise.com. Visit my website, take the free beliefs quiz, schedule a root cause call. I have all of my offers, all of my prices. Everything is listed right there on my website. If you have any questions, you know where to find me, and I'll talk to you next week.